Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Three Songs Podcast. It's your host, Bay. Three Songs Podcast. It's a little bit of a longer show today, so I'll keep it short. Today, we're talking to Joe Stroffolino, episode 16, about his songs, original songs, AI Sucks, The Cabbage, and Catholic School. He's out of Tucson, Arizona. He's a former stand-up comedian from Los Angeles. And he writes funny, poignant songs about the world around him, and it's worth a listen. So I hope you enjoy the show. Episode 16, Fresh Bold Thing, Joe Stroffolino. We'll talk after.
I haven't done the comedy in a long time. I want to do it again at some point, but it's hard. I mean, I have a child, and it's hard to get out and do it. You have to really, the thing about comedy, which also kind of plays into like writing lyrics as well, is you're trying to distill it down to like the bare minimum of words, because you don't want to be really verbose, in other words. And the same thing's true with like a song. Like you want to be able to get your point across, but you also don't want to be too verbose, And so I think they kind of, from a writing perspective, like I never ended up really doing stand-up comedy. I ended up doing it for like 3 or 4 years. And like I said, I went on the road for a little bit and opened up for some people for a few weeks. And it was kind of rough being out there on the road. I'm the oldest of 9 kids. For birth control, my parents used the rhythm method. Apparently, they weren't very musical. Growing up, my dad was always a very forward-thinking guy. When the government decided we should adopt the metric system, he was the first guy on our block to switch from beating us with a yardstick to beating us with a meter stick. But 9 kids, my dad was always trying to cut corners and be frugal. He liked to play this game in the winter. How much lower should we set the thermostat before the family dies of hypothermia? Some nights, I wasn't sure if I was falling asleep or slipping into a coma. I'd say my bedtime prayers. As I lay me down to sleep, I can see my breath because my dad's too cheap. Hail Mary, full of ice, an electric blanket would be real nice. Our Father who art in heaven, won't you raise the thermostat to 67? I like the most recent one called Charlie.
Is that one of the songs we'll be doing on this thing?
We could, we could talk about
What three songs are we doing? I know we're doing AI.
I would like to talk about AI Sucks. Maybe The Cabbage, and
because we had 2 so far.
Yeah, AI Sucks, The Cabbage, and what else was I thinking about? I was thinking of Catholic School. I think.
Catholic School, yeah, those 2 I got. And the Cabbage one, yeah, sure.
In the 1970s, it was a Catholic grade school. I was there from 1st grade through 8th grade, and I just tried to take things that had happened in the school and turn it into a song. And my biggest takeaway on that was, were just the nuns mostly. Most of them were very unhappy, from what I could tell. They didn't seem like very happy, happy women. And I've been reading about this lately, and a lot of them, I think they became nuns when they were like 18 years old, and they never got to live their lives. And now they were like, these ladies in their 50s or their 60s, and they've been doing this for, all these years, and they probably were sick of it.
She was like a witch, except instead of a pointy hat, she wore a habit. She carried a crucifix instead of a broom.
My 1st grade teacher, I say she was a nun. She was actually an ex-nun. She had actually left the actual convent. So I don't know why. I have no idea why. But this was back in the 1970s, and when we had the Cold War and, the Soviet Union and so, Siberia was where they had those, prisoners would get sent to in the Soviet Union when they were, when they sent people away. So she called the back of the room Siberia.
Really?
And yeah, she really did. And so if a kid was bad, it never happened to me, but if a kid was bad, she would actually make the kid take all the books out of their desk and hold them in the back of the room, go to the back of the room and just literally stand there like holding the books for like an hour or two. And these kids would be back there shaking and crying, and that's a terrible way to teach first graders.
First grade teacher was a nun who, if your penmanship was sloppy, she'd make you take all your books and stand there holding them in the back of the room.
Another one, Sister Margaret. This is true. I mean, I remember she was my 5th grade teacher, and she had polio as a child. So not only, they used to call the nuns penguins, and she actually walked like a penguin because one of her legs was kind of, not quite right. And she was very old. She had this like brightly dyed red bangs poking out of her habit. And I remember the first day of school, I remember her, I guess she thought she was cool. She's sitting there going, "You've come a long way, baby." That's what she told us or whatever. I'll never forget that. But she was the one who, she would pull her hair. If you acted up, she would suddenly just, grab you and start pulling your hair. Basically, that was one of the things that was a lot of the nuns pulled the hair. Actually, that was kind of pretty. Corporal punishment was definitely a thing back then.
It seems almost unnecessary at some point. Did it become sadistic where they could just get away with it, so they just did it for pleasure in a way? Or
I think they just did it. I think it was just their way of, if you were acting up, you're in line, you're supposed to be quiet, and you're acting up, and they just would go over and start, and they would say fresh, bold thing. When they grabbed your hair, they would all say the same thing as they were pulling it. They would go, fresh, bold thing, as they were yanking on your hair, basically, which is kind of, I don't know if they taught that in the academy when they were going through hair pulling training. They had to like make that, I'll say that chant. I really don't know.
That sounds horrifying.
Yeah.
Fresh young. What do they say? Fresh
bold thing. Fresh bold thing. Bold.
Oh, fresh bold thing. Oh my gosh, that sounds
bold.
Scary.
Yeah. And she really did tell these stories. She would tell these stories about cautionary tales. And I remember her telling the story one time about, there was this girl who, after school, somebody came to the school and said, we're here to pick you up. And she didn't know who these people were. They were strangers. And she got in the car with them and went off with these kids. And she's sitting there telling the story, and she was never seen again. And then she would say, 5 years later, these construction workers were in a field and they were digging, and they hit something hard, and it was a suitcase, and they opened it up, and inside the suitcase, they found the remains of the girl, all chopped up.
She tell cautionary tales about innocent kids who got in cars with strangers. She seemed to enjoy describing all the bloody graphic details of the danger.
This is like a 5th grade teacher. She was like relishing the story,
That's so cool.
Holding court. And the other thing I tell in that song too, which is true, I don't know if what your teachers did when you were a kid, but like if we were like really acting up as a class, they would, make us like get out our notebooks and write an essay. Stop working and sit there. You need to write a 1,000-word essay on why you shouldn't be acting up. And so we're all furiously writing in our notebooks, trying to write this essay, just writing down gibberish to like get the 1,000 words. And she'd be sitting at her desk, and then all of a sudden she would get these scissors out of her desk, and she really did have these whiskers on her chin, and she would literally like pull the whisker like this tight, snip it. And she'd be sitting there,
oh God,
snipping her whiskers, while we were writing our punishment.
Gray whiskers growing out of her chin. She'd sit at her desk and trim them with scissors, and you sure as hell better not grin. Tell cautionary tales about innocent kids who got in cars with strangers.
That's the part that stood out to me. I was trying to get you that one too. So everything's fine in that school. You're a healthy human being from that school. Everything's okay, Joe.
It was a good education. I mean, I have to say it was a good education, and I was terrified. So I had my hair pulled a few times, but I was the kind of kid where I was so scared of getting my hair pulled that I didn't generally act up.
That shows you, the pressure the teachers can be under too, because they have to put up with little shit kids half the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's definitely, it's tough for them too, I'm sure. Over Christmas vacation one year, the school burned down. Like literally, the school was right next to the church, and we were going to the church that Sunday, and the school was on fire. Like literally had to cancel church. And we were out of school for like a week, and they ended up, finding a public school that we could go to, like, and use their rooms or whatever. And I remember going to the school for the next 6 months of the year. And I remember they found all our textbooks. They were still okay, but they were waterlogged and they smelled like smoke. And we actually were using like books that were all warped and smelled like smoke for the next 6 months, which was kind of crazy.
That is crazy.
And I didn't put that in the song, but it was, and it was interesting that they ended up rebuilding the school. I guess they had pretty good insurance, so we came back.
Somehow I survived 8 straight years of Catholic school. Thank God I'm still alive.
I try to watch my diet. I try to exercise. I try to maintain a positive attitude. I keep hearing this commercial where they ask, is baldness getting you down? Is it making you feel old, unattractive, depressed? Actually, I was feeling really good until I heard that commercial. Now I feel like Quasimodo. These people, they're selling this anti-baldness shampoo where they claim the reason I'm bald is, get this, the follicles on my head are clogged with dirt. Do they realize how insulting that sounds? What they're saying is that I'm not bald because of genetics. No. The reason I'm bald is because I'm too incompetent to properly wash my head. I find it very convenient that all the dirt on my head just so happens to be arranged in a nice, neat horseshoe-shaped pattern on top of my skull. Yet the one part of my body I have trouble washing, my back, that's the place where I have the most hair. It's absurd.
When I was 13, I picked up my first guitar. It was my mother's, it only had one nylon string. I tried to play it like a rock star. I learned to play the Coca-Cola jingle so I could teach the world to sing. When I was 14, I put on 6 new strings. I learned to play the Beatles, I learned to play...
So that was, there's this guy I'm kind of friends with on SoundCloud. I'm trying to, his name is spelled Michele, like Michael in Italian, which is Michele Insani. He's a really, really great musician on SoundCloud, and I've done 3 songs with him actually, collaborated. But the one I did that I really am proud of, I'm proud of all 3 of them, but it was called AI Sucks. And what he did is he had this song that he had written that was kind of, all about his life. It was very autobiographical. And it kind of starts out where he's talking about, being 13 years old and picking up his first guitar. And he talks about his whole journey, like where, his whole life he's been trying to write music and slowly improve his songwriting skills and his guitar playing skills. And, now he's finally at the point in his life where he's older and he had a career for a while. The music kind of fell away. And I was listening to this and I was like, wow, this sounds a lot like me. I wish I would have written this song. And he's like, well, why don't you try, writing? Why don't you try taking this and turning it into a song? Because he had written this in Italian and he had translated it with Google Translate, basically, or whatever, because English wasn't his first language, even though he does know some English. So I took it and I kind of morphed it like into more of my style. And the song itself, the heart and soul of the song is still his story, but I could really relate to it. And I tried to like inject some humor into it. And that's what I did.
When I was 16, I got a new guitar for my birthday. The metal strings all through my fingers, but I continued to play. And the calluses formed, and every day I learned a brand new chord. I was obsessed with that guitar, and I never grew bored. I wrote songs every day, and most of them were a mess. But I believe that through hard work, I could achieve success.
So that's the first half of the song.
That's a cool song. That's a really cool song.
And it kind of sums up how and the second half of the song, which you can hear on SoundCloud, he basically talks about in his 20s and his 30s and his 40s, and he talks about digital technology and how he started to, do all this stuff on SoundCloud and YouTube and Instagram. And just when he feels like he's got it all together. Now AI is out, and people can do the same thing by just pushing a button.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people, they'll claim that it takes them a couple of weeks to get that song right, the AI people. They're like, it's still a lot of hard work because, my perspective on it is they're kind of almost like rolling a dice, and they just keep, running it through the program and running it through the program. And yes, you have to be able to have the ability to discern if what's coming out of that AI is any good, and they're also feeding it with some of their lyrics, so there is some human interaction that's involved, but it's not the same thing as what we do.
No, it's not the same thing, but I guess we have to, as people that are creating this stuff, have to look at it as something that's here to stay. You know what I mean? So
it is, and we're not gonna. It's not going away. I mean, we're just going to be the Luddites if we don't accept it up to a certain point.
Exactly.
But I just don't know if there's going to be the equivalent of free trade coffee with music. I don't think you're going to be able to put a song out with like a label on that says human created, HI, created with HI, human intelligence.
Yeah,
you're going to have a little label on your.
We need the label now.
You have to decide where's the niche for people like us. Because I think it's going to become more and more prevalent. And I had a coworker, and I had gone and I had bought some pizza dough, and I had bought some sauce, and I had bought some cheese, and I told the guy, I made some homemade pizza last night or whatever. And he looked at me incredulously, and he said, why would you do that? You can just go to Domino's, and I almost fear that in some ways people are just going to be like, you wrote a song? Why?
Now all it takes is 2 commands and an enter. And in 2 minutes you have 10 versions of the same damn new song. You just have to choose the type: folk, rock, rap, pop, metal, jazz, trap, or blues. You don't even need to write the lyrics. You push a few buttons, let the AI choose. And people will think your songs are great, even though you didn't write or play a single note.
But the worst part about the comedy, I'm telling you, you could have like 5 minutes that just 9 times out of 10 it just kills in front of an audience. They're all just laughing, and it always works. It's great stuff. People afterwards are slapping you on the back, going, "That was so funny." Then you go in front of a place and do it, and nobody laughs, and it's like you just suddenly you don't feel the same. It's the weirdest thing.
For my 6th birthday, for weeks and weeks, I begged my dad for a dog. But my dad didn't think I was responsible enough, and he was also kind of cheap. But I kept asking him constantly, and finally he broke down.
I'll tell you the story about that song. That was a song where it was probably around 1999. I was living in Los Angeles, and I was taking a acting class, and they asked me to do a monologue. So I wrote this monologue in the class, and that's what ended up being the basis for my song, The Cabbage. It's the story of a boy who wants to get a dog, but instead his father gives him a cabbage and tells him to take care of the cabbage. And I'll tell you the monologue. So it goes like this. It goes, for my 6th birthday, for weeks and weeks, I begged my dad to buy me a dog. But A, my dad didn't think I was responsible enough to take care of the dog. And B, my dad was also very cheap. So instead, he bought me a cabbage plant. And he made a deal with me. He said, "Son, you take good care of this cabbage plant, and next year I'll consider buying you a dog." So I named him Charlie, and I planted him in the flower bed in our front yard. And every day I'd go outside and I'd feed Charlie water and fertilizer, and I'd update him on what was going on inside the house. And as far as cabbages go, Charlie was a very patient listener. That summer, me and Charlie became best friends, and Charlie grew and grew until one day I noticed that his head was actually bigger than my dad's.
I guess my dad must have noticed too, because one crisp autumn afternoon, me and Charlie were sitting in the flower bed listening to a baseball game. My dad came outside and he said to me, it's time for you to become a man.
And he reached down and he ripped Charlie out of the ground. For a couple of seconds, I could see his little roots gasping for soil. And then Charlie grew still, and we carried his lifeless body into the house, and my dad handed me a knife, and we cleaned and we gutted Charlie. And I swore that was the last time I'd ever have a close personal relationship with a vegetable. And that night, as me and my family sat around the dinner table eating our cabbage soup, I swore to myself, I'm sure glad my dad didn't buy me a dog. Thank you very much.
Happy. I go down the produce aisle at the grocery store. I see those cabbages and it makes me sad. I'm glad for the time we spent together. Sorry it had to end up so bad.
All right, thanks everybody for joining. That's episode 16, 3 Songs Podcast. Fresh, bold thing. It's in the books. It's in the bag. I want to thank Joe for participating and telling us the story. It really meant a lot. I really enjoyed this one. Check out his link below for his other songs. They're worth a listen. And next episode 17, we've got Andrzej Markwatic. Andrzej Markwatic. I might be saying that wrong. I'm going to say it one more time if he's rolling his eyes when he hears this. Andrzej Markwatic. Andrzej Markwatic. I'm just going to keep saying it. Anyway, thanks for joining us, guys. It was really appreciate it. It's going to be really special when he's from the Czech Republic and he's got a great voice. He's a great guy. Definitely listen to the next episode 17. Until next time, your host, Bay. Thanks again for listening.